pleasant day to everyone. So now we will discuss about globalization. When we say globalization, it basically refers to the shift toward a more integrated and interdependent world economy. A free movement of goods, services, and people across the world in a seamless and integrated manner. So the term sometimes refers to the movement of people as labor and knowledge, particularly in technology, across international borders. So globalization has several facets, including the globalization of market and globalization of production. When we say the globalization of markets, it refers to the merging of historically distinct and separate national markets into one huge global marketplace. Falling barriers to cross-border trade have made it easier to sell internationally. It has been argued for some time that the taste and preference of consumers in different nations are beginning to converge on some global norm, thereby helping to create a global market. While the globalization of production refers to the sourcing of goods and services from locations around the world to take advantage of national differences in the cost and quality of factors of production such as labor, energy, land, and capital. By doing this, companies hope to lower their overall cost structure or improve the quality of functionality of their product offering, thereby allowing them to compete more effectively. As markets globalize and an increasing proportion of business activity transcends national borders, institutions are needed to help manage, regulate, and police the global marketplace and to promote the establishment of multinational treaties to govern the global business system. So over the past half century, a number of important global institutions have been created to help perform this function, so including the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade or GATT and its successor, the World Trade Organization or WTO, the International Monetary Fund or IMF, and its sister institution, the World Bank, and the United Nations or UN. All these institutions were created by voluntary agreement between individual nation states, and their functions are enshrined in international treaties. So, the World Trade Organization, like GATT before it, is primarily responsible for policing the world trade system and making sure nation states adhere to rules laid down in trade treaties signed by WTO member states. So the WTO is also responsible for facilitating the establishment of additional multinational agreements between WTO member states. So International Monetary Fund was established to maintain order in the international monetary system. The World Bank was set up to promote economic development. So the IMF is often seen as the lender of last resort to nation state. Those economies are in the turmoil and currencies are losing value against those of other nations. So when it comes to World Bank, it was set up to promote economic development. It has a focus on making low-interest loans to cash-strapped infrastructures, investments such as building dams or roads. United Nations was established October 24, 1945 by 51 countries committed to preserving peace through international cooperation and collective security. Today, nearly every nation in the world belongs to the United Nations. Membership now totals 191 countries. Besides, according to the Charter, the UN has four purposes: to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to cooperate in solving international problems, and in promoting respect for human rights, and to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations. Drivers of globalization. Two macro factors underlie the trend toward greater globalization. The first is the decline in barriers to the free flow of goods, services, and capital that has occurred since the end of World War II. However, declining barriers to cross-border trade and investment cannot be taken for granted. The demands for protection from foreign competitors are still often heard in countries around the world, including the United States. Although it is not clear whether the political majority in the industrialized world favors further reductions in trade barriers. If trade barriers decline no further, at least for the time being, this will put a brake upon the globalization of both markets and production. The second factor is the technological change, particularly the dramatic developments in recent years in communication, information processing, and transportation technologies. The lowering of trade barriers made globalization of markets and production a theoretical possibility. Technological change has made it a tangible reality. Telecommunication is creating a global audience, and transportation is creating global village. Declining trade and investment barriers. During the 1920s and 30s, many of the world nation-states erected formidable barriers to international trade and foreign direct investment. When we say international trade, it occurs when a firm exports goods or services to consumers in another country. While foreign direct investment or FDI, it occurs when a firm invests resources in business activities outside its home country. So, under the WTO, a mechanism now exists for dispute resolution and the enforcement of trade laws, and there is a push to cut tariffs on industrial goods, services, and agricultural products. Under the umbrella of GATT, 8 rounds of negotiations among member states, or now is numbering 150, have worked to lower barriers to free flow of goods and services. The most recent round of negotiations to be completed, known as the Uruguay Round, was finalized in December 1993. The role of technological change. The lowering of trade barriers made globalization of markets and production a theoretical possibility. Technological change has made it a tangible reality. Since the end of World War II, the world has seen major advance in communication, information processing, and transportation technology, including the explosive emergence of the Internet and World Wide Web. Telecommunication is creating a global audience, and transportation is creating a global village. Implications for the globalization of production. So, lower transportation costs make a geographically dispersed production system more economical and allow firms to better respond to international customer demands. Implication for the globalization of market. Low-cost communication networks help create electronic global marketplace. Low-cost transportation enable firms to create global markets and facilitate the movement of people from country to country, promoting a convergence of consumer taste and preference. The global economy of 21st century. The past quarter century has seen rapid changes in the global economy. Barriers to the free flow of goods, services, and capital have been coming down. The volume of cross-border trade and investment has been growing more rapidly than global output, indicating that national economies are becoming more closely integrated into a single, interdependent global economic system. The globalization debate. Is the shift toward a more integrated and interdependent global economy a good thing? Many experts believe that globalization is promoting greater prosperity in the global economy, more jobs, and lower prices for goods and services. Others feel that globalization is not beneficial. Concerned critics of globalization. Anti-globalization protesters now turn up at almost every major meeting of a globalization institution. Protesters fear that globalization is forever changing the world in a negative way. Globalization's jobs and income. Critics claim jobs in advanced economies are being lost to low-wage nations. Supporters claim while some jobs may be lost, the economy as a whole is better off. Free trade will result in countries specializing in the production of those goods and services that they can produce most efficiently, while importing goods and services that they cannot produce as efficiently, and that in doing so, all countries will gain. Globalization, labor policies, and the environment. Critics argue free trade encourages firms from advanced nations to move manufacturing facilities offshore to less developed countries with lax environmental and labor regulations. Supporters claim tougher environmental regulation and stricter labor standards reflect economic progress. As countries get richer as a result of globalization, they raise their environmental and labor standard. Free trade does not lead to more pollution and labor exploitation, it leads to less. Globalization and national sovereignty. Critics worry economic power is shifting away from national governments and towards supranational organizations such as the WTO, the European Union or EU, and the UN. Supporters argue that the power of this organization is limited to what nation-states collectively agree to grant. The organizations must be able to persuade member states to follow certain actions. Without the support of members, the organizations have no power. Globalization and the world's poor. Critics argue the gap between rich and poor has gotten wider and the benefits of globalization have not been shared equally. Supporters suggest that the actions of governments have made limited economic improvement in many countries. Many of the world's poorest nations are under totalitarian regimes, suffer from endemic corruption, have few property rights, are involved in war, and are burdened by high debt. Managing in the global marketplace. First, countries' differences require companies to vary their practices country by country. Second, managers face a greater and more complex range of problems. Third, international companies must work within the limits imposed by governmental intervention and the global trading system. And lastly, international transaction required converting funds and being susceptible to exchange rate changes.
So, good morning. The next topic is all about national differences in political economy. What is political economy? It refers to the interdependence of a country's political, economical, and legal system which interact with each other and ultimately affect the level of economic well-being. A political system, on the other hand, is the system of government used in nation. So, political system can be accessed according to two dimensions. The first dimension is collectivism as opposed to individualism. The second dimension is the degree to which they are democratic or totalitarian. Collectivism and individualism. Collectivism is a system that stresses the primacy of collective goals over individual goals. This basically means that needs of society as a whole are generally viewed as being more important than individual freedom. When we say individualism, individuals should have freedom over their economic and political pursuits. The interests of individuals should take precedence over the interests of the state. Democratic and totalitarian. Democratic. In democracy, it is a political system in which government is by the people and is exercised either directly or through elected individuals. Totalitarian. Totalitarianism, where one person or political party exercise absolute control over all spheres of life, and opposing political parties are forbidden. It is a political system in which states holds total authority over the society and it seeks to control all aspects of public and private life whenever necessary. There are three broad types of economic system: the market, the command, and the mixed economy. Market economy, the goods and services that the country produces and the quantity in which they are produced is determined by supply and demand. All productive activities are privately owned and prices are free from controls. When we say command economy, the goods and services that a country produces, the quantity in which they are produced, and the price at which they are sold are planned by the government. When we say mixed economy, it includes some elements of a market economy and some elements of a command economy. The government sometimes takes control over troubled firms in order to counter extreme social causes such as excessive unemployment. Next is the legal system. Legal system, it refers to the rules or laws that regulate behaviors along with the processes by which the laws of a country are enforced and through which redress for grievances is obtained. The three types of legal system: the common law system, the civil law system, and the theocratic law system. Common law system, it is based on tradition, precedent, and custom. When we say civil law system, it is less adversarial than common law system, and it is based on detailed set of laws organized into codes. And the last legal system is the theocratic law system. It is based on religious teaching. Islamic law is the most widely practiced and primarily a moral rather than a commercial law. Different legal systems handle property rights, which can be violated in two ways: through private action and public action. When we say private action, it refers to theft, piracy, and blackmail, while public action, it is when public official export income resources or the property itself from property holder. Intellectual property should be protected. We can use patents, copyrights, and trademark.
The next chapter is differences in culture. Cross-cultural literacy is an understanding of how cultural differences across and within nations can affect the way in which business is practiced. It is important to success in international business. There may be a relationship between culture and the cost of doing business in the country or region. Next is culture. Culture is a system of values and norms that are shared among a group of people and that when taken together constitute a design for living. Values is abstract ideas about what a group believes to be good, right, and desirable. Provide the context within which a society's norms are established and justified. Norms, the social rules and guidelines that prescribe appropriate behavior in particular situations. The social rules that govern the actions of people toward one another and can be further subdivided into folkways and mores. Folkways, folkways, the routine conventions of everyday life, and mores, the norms that are seen as central to the functioning of a society and to its social life. The determinants of culture. The values and norms of a culture are the evolutionary product of a number of factors at work in a society, including prevailing political and economic philosophies, a society's social structure, and the dominant religion, language, and education. Social structure. A society's social structure is its basic social organization. Two dimensions to consider are: first, the degree to which the basic unit of social organizations is the individual as opposed to the group, and the degree to which a society is stratified into classes or castes. Individuals and groups. In societies where the individuals is emphasized, individual achievements and entrepreneurship are promoted. But this can encourage job switching, competition between individuals in a company rather than team building, and the lack of loyalty to the firm. Group is an association of two or more individuals who have a shared sense of identity and who interact with each other in structured ways on the basis of a common set of expectations about each other's behavior. Groups are common in many Asian societies. Many Western countries emphasize the individual. In societies where the group is emphasized, cooperation and teamwork are encouraged and lifetime employment is common. But individual initiative and creativity may be suppressed. Social stratification. All societies are stratified in a hierarchical basis into social categories or social strata. Social strata usually defined by characteristics such as family background, occupation, and income. Societies differ in terms of the degree of ability between social strata and the significance attached to social strata in a business context. Social mobility, the extent to which individuals can move out of the strata into which they are born. Caste system. This is the most rigid system and a closed system of stratification in which social position is determined by the family into which a person is born and change in that positions are unlikely. And class system is a less rigid system and the form of open social stratification in which the position a person has by birth be changed through achievement or luck. Religious and ethical systems. Religion is a system of shared beliefs and rituals that are concerned with the realm and of the sacred. Religion with the greatest following are first, Christianity has 1.7 billion adherents. Next is Islam, 1 billion adherents, followed by Hinduism, 750 million adherents, and Buddhism has 350 million adherents. Confucianism also influenced behavior and shapes culture in many parts of Asia. Ethical system. A set of moral principles or values that are used to guide and shape behavior. The ethical practices of individuals within a culture are often closely intertwined with their religion. Christianity. Christianity is the most widely practiced religion, common throughout Europe, the Americas, and other countries settled by Europeans. Economic implications of Christianity. In 1904, Max Weber suggested that it was the Protestant work ethic, or focus on hard work, wealth creation, and frugality, that was the driving force of capitalism. Next is Islam. Islam is an embracing way of life that governs one's being. Muslims believe that there is one true omnipotent God. What are the economic implications of Islam? Under Islam, people do not own property, but only act as a steward for God and thus must take care of that which they have been entrusted with. Islam is supportive of business, but the way business is practiced is prescribed. Business that are perceived the making a profit through the exploitation of others by deception or by breaking contractual obligations are unwelcome. Next is Hinduism. Hinduism focuses on the importance of achieving spiritual growth and development, which may require material and physical self-denial. Practiced primarily on the Indian subcontinent. The economic implications of Hinduism. Hindus are valued by their spiritual rather than material achievements. Promotions and adding new responsibilities may not be the goal of an employee or may be infeasible due to the employee's caste. Buddhism. Buddhists stress spiritual growth and afterlife rather than achievement while in this world. Found mainly in Central and Southeast Asia, China, Korea, and Japan. And the economic implications of Buddhism does not support the caste system, so individuals do have some mobility and can work with individuals from different classes. Entrepreneurial activity is acceptable. And last is Confucianism. Confucianism teaches the importance of attaining personal salvation through the right action. The need for high moral and ethical conduct and loyalty to others is central. It is practiced mainly in China. Economic applications of Confucianism. Three key teachings of Confucianism: loyalty, reciprocal obligations, and honesty may all lead to a lowering of the cost of doing business in Confucian societies. Language. Countries differ in terms of language or means of communications. There are two forms of language, spoken and unspoken. Language is one of the defining characteristics of culture. Spoken language. Countries with more than one spoken language often have more than one culture. Chinese is the mother tongue of the largest number of Filipino in the world. English is the most widely spoken language in the world and becoming the language of international business. However, knowledge of the local language is beneficial and, in some cases, critical for business success. Next is unspoken language. Unspoken language or nonverbal cues. Examples include facial expressions and gestures. Can be important for communication. Many nonverbal cues are culturally bound and because they may be interpreted differently can result in misunderstanding. Education. Formal education is the medium through which individuals learn many of the language, conceptual, and mathematical skills that are indispensable in the modern society. The knowledge-based training and educational opportunities available to country citizens can also give it a competitive advantage in the market and make it a more or less attractive place for expanding business. The general education level of a country is a good indicator of the types of products that might sell in that location or the type of promotional materials that might be successful. Culture and the workplace. Gert Hofstede isolated four dimensions that summarize different cultures. One is power distance, two is individualism versus collectivism, three is uncertainty avoidance, and last is masculinity versus femininity. Power distance is how a society deals with the fact that people are unequal in physical and intellectual capabilities. Individual versus collectivism is the relationship between the individual and his or her fellows. Uncertainty avoidance is the extent to which different cultures socialize their members into accepting ambiguous situations and tolerating ambiguity. And last is masculinity versus femininity. It's the relationship between gender and work roles. Cultural change. Culture evolves over time, although changes in value systems can be slow and painful for a society. Social turmoil is an inevitable outcome of cultural change. Cultural change is particularly common as countries become economically stronger.
Now we will be discussing international trade theory. International trade theory refers to a situation where a government does not attempt to influence through quotas or duties what a citizen can buy from another country or what they can produce and sell to another country. So it means that trading is exchanging goods and services from one country to another. So let's go for the benefits of trade. International trade allows a country to specialize in the manufacture and export of products that can be produced most efficiently in that country. It is beneficial for a country to engage in international trade even for products it is able to produce itself. So let's go for one ideology for trading, which is mercantilism. It is a country's best interest to maintain a trade surplus to export more than it imports. It advocates government intervention to achieve a surplus in the balance of trade. It viewed trade as a zero-sum game, problematic and non-economically valid, yet many political views today have the goal of boosting exports while limiting imports by seeking only selective liberalization of trade. Comparative advantage. A country should specialize in the production of those goods that it produces less efficiently from other countries, even if this means buying goods from other countries that could produce more efficiently itself. So, we are talking about the gains from trade. The theory of comparative advantage trade is a positive sum game in which all gain. Potential world production is greater with unrestricted free trade than it is with restricted trade. It provides a strong rationale for encouraging free trade. So, let's move on. Let's talk about new trade theory. New trade theory in 1970 suggests that because of economies of scale, unit cost reductions associated with a large scale of output, trade can increase the variety of goods available to customer and decrease the average cost of those goods. In those industries, when the output required to attain economies of scale represent a significant proportion of total world demand, the global market may only be able to support a small number of firms. For increasing product variety and reducing costs, a nation without a trade may not be able to support the demand necessary for producers to realize required economies of scale, and so certain products may not be produced. So a nation with trade may be able to specialize in producing a narrower range of products and then buy goods that it does not make from other countries. Each nation then simultaneously increasing the variety of goods available to its consumers and lower the cost of product. So economies of scale and first mover advantage. Firms with first mover advantage, the economic and strategic advantages that accrue to many entrants into an industry will develop economies of scale and create barriers to entry for other firms. The pattern of trade we observe in the world economy may be the result of first mover advantages and economies of scale. So, let's talk about the factor endowments. A nation position in factor endowments can lead to a competitive advantage. This factor can be either basic, like natural resources, climate, location, or advanced skill, labor, infrastructure, technological know-how. Basic factors can provide an initial advantage that is then reinforced and extended by investment in advanced factor. So for the demand condition, the nature of home demand for an industry, product, or service influence the development of capabilities, sophisticated and demanding customer pressure firms to be more competitive and to produce high quality innovative products. So for related and supporting industries, the present supplier industries and related industries that are internationally competitive. This industry can spill over and contribute to success in other country. Successful industries tend to be grouped in the cluster in countries, which then prompts knowledge flows between firms. Having world-class manufacture of semiconductor processing equipment can lead and to be result of having a competitive semiconductor industry. So for the firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. Firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, this condition in the nation governing how companies are created, organized, and managed, and nature of domestic rivalry. Nation of characterized by different management ideologies which influence the ability of firms to build national competitive advantage. There's a strong association between vigorous domestic rivalry and the creation and persistence of competitive advantage in an industry.
Good day, everyone. The next chapter is Political Economy of International Trade. First is Instrument of Trade Policy. Trade policy use 7 main instruments. First one is tariff. A tax levied on imports that effectively raises the cost of imported products related to domestic products. Why do government impose tariffs? First one is increase government revenues. Second one is provide protection to domestic producers against foreign competitors by increasing the cost of imported foreign goods. The third one is force consumers to pay more for certain imports. Subsidy is a government payment to a domestic producer. Subsidies can help into two ways. First one is they can help them compete against low-cost foreign imports. And the second one is they can help them gain export markets. Import quotas and voluntary export restraints. First one is import quotas. Is a direct restriction on the quantity of some good that may be imported into a country. Second one is tariff rate quotas. A hybrid of quota and in a tariff where a lower tariff is applied to imports within the quota than to those over the quota. And the third one is voluntary export restraints quotas on trade imposed by the exporting country, typically at the request of the importing country's government. And the last one is quota rent, the extra profit that producers make when supply is artificially limited by an import quota. Local content requirements. A local content requirement demands that some specific fraction of a good be produced domestically. Local content requirements benefit domestic producers and jobs, but consumers face higher prices. Administrative policies is bureaucratic rules that are designed to make it difficult for imports to enter a country. Dumping is a selling goods in a foreign market below their cost of production or selling goods in a foreign market at below their fair market value. Anti-dumping policies is designed to punish foreign firms that engage in dumping. The case for government intervention. Governments intervene for political reasons and for economic reasons. There are two types of arguments. First one is political arguments. Political arguments is concerned with protecting the interests of certain groups within a nation, normally producers, obtained at the expense of other groups, normally consumers. Economic arguments is a concern with boosting the overall wealth of a nation to the benefit of all both producers and consumers. Political arguments for intervention. Political arguments for government include protecting jobs, protecting industries deemed important for national security, retaliating to unfair foreign competitions, protecting consumers from dangerous products, furthering the goals of foreign policy, The last is protecting the human rights of individuals in exporting countries. Government use two case economic arguments to justify intervention in international trade. First one is the infant industry argument. It suggests that an industry should be protected until it can be developed and be viable and competitive internationally. Strategic trade policy. It suggests that in cases where there may be important first mover advantages, government can help firms from their countries attain these advantages. The revised case for free trade. New trade theories believe government intervention in international trade is justified while some classic trade theories disagree. Also, some new trade theories believe that while strategic trade theory is appealing a theory, it may not be workable in practice. They suggest a race case for free trade. The situation where restriction on trade may be inappropriate. First one is retaliation. Second one is domestic policies. Development of the world trading system. Since World War II, an international trading framework has evolved to govern world trade. In its 50 years, the framework was known as the General Agreement on Tariffs and the Trade. Since 1995, the framework has been known as the World Trade Organization. From Smith to the Great Depression. Up until the Great Depression of the 1930s, most countries had some degree of protectionism. The US enacted the Smooth-Hawley Act in 1930, created significant imports tariffs on foreign goods. 1947 to 1979, GATT, trade and liberalization and economic growth. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was established in 1947. The approach of GATT, a multilateral trade, was to gradually eliminate barriers to trade. GATT's membership grew from 19 to more than 120 nations. Tariff reductions was spread over 8 rounds of negotiation. JTT regulations were enforced by a mutual monitoring system. The Uruguay Round and World Trade Organization. The Uruguay Round in 1986 focused on first is services and intellectual property. The World Trade Organization. The future of the WTO. The WTO is currently focusing on anti-dumping policies, is encouraging members to strengthen the regulation governing the imposition of anti-dumping duties. Protectionism in agriculture is concerned with the high level of tariffs and subsidies in the agricultural sector of many economies. Protecting intellectual property. Members believe that the protection of the intellectual property rights is essential to the international trading system. Market access for non-agricultural goods and services. Bring down tariff rates on non-agricultural goods and services, and reduce the scope for the selective use of high tariff rates. A new round of talks, Doha launched in 2001, focused on cutting tariffs on industrial goods and services, placing out subsidies to agricultural producers, reducing barriers to cross-border investment, limiting the use of anti-dumping laws. Implication for managers. Why should international managers care about the political economy for free trade are about the relative merits of arguments for free trade and protectionism. Trade barriers impact firm strategy. Firms can play a role in promoting free trade or trade barriers. Trade barriers and trade firm strategy. Trade theory suggests why dispersing production activities globally can be beneficial. However, trade barriers may limit a firm's ability to do so.
So the last topic is all about foreign direct investment. In this topic, we're gonna talk about investing in foreign countries. So let's start. First, what is foreign direct investment? Foreign direct investment or FDI occurs when a firm invests directly in new facilities to produce and or market in a foreign country. Once a firm undertakes FDI, it becomes a multinational enterprise. So, foreign direct investment is an investment in a business by an investor from another country for which the foreign investor has control over the company purchased. Also, it is defined as cross-border investment made by a resident in one economy in an enterprise in another company. FDI is a direct investment into production in a country by a company located in another country, either by buying a company in the target country or by expanding operations of an existing business in that country. So we have two main forms of FDI. First is the greenfield investment and the second is the acquisition or merging. When we say greenfield investment, the establishment of a wholly new operation in a foreign country. It is the investment in manufacturing, office, or etc. A company starts its operation in new country from the ground up. That is a greenfield investment. Some example of company that is greenfield investment are Toyota, Honda, and P&G. The second type of The second type is acquisition or merging. It is with an existing firm in the foreign country. When we say merger, it is a combination of two companies to form a new company, while acquisition is the purchase of one company by another company in which a new company is formed. So next is the FDI in the world economy. We have two ways to look at FDI. First is flow of FDI, which is refers to the amount of foreign direct investment undertaken over a given time period. Second is stock of FDI, which is refers to the total accumulated value of foreign owned asset at a given time. Outflows of FDI are the flows out of a country, while inflows of FDI are the flows of FDI into a country. So, next is the trends in FDI. Over the past 20 years, there has been a marked increase in both the flow and stock of foreign direct investment in the world economy. FDI has grown more rapidly than world trade and world output because firms still fear the threat of protectionism. Second, the general shift toward democratic political institution and free market economies has encouraged foreign direct investment. And last, the globalization of the world economy is having a positive impact on the volume of FDI as firms undertake foreign direct investment to ensure they have a significant presence in many regions of the world. Form of foreign direct investment. The majority of cross-border investment is in the form of mergers and acquisition rather than the greenfield investment. Firms prefer to acquire existing assets because merger and acquisitions are quicker to execute than greenfield investment. Also, it is easier and perhaps less risky for a firm to acquire desired assets than build them from the ground up. And third, firms believe that they can increase the efficiency of an acquired unit by transferring capital, technology, or management skills. Limitations of exporting. The viability of an exporting strategy that can be constrained by transportation costs and trade barriers. Foreign direct investment may be undertaken as respond or threaten trade barriers such as import tariffs or quotas. When we say limitations of licensing, internalization theory suggests that licensing has three major drawbacks as a strategy for exploiting foreign market opportunities. First is licensing may result in a firms giving away valuable technological know-how to a potential foreign competitor. Second, licensing does not give a firm the tight control over manufacturing, marketing, and strategy in a foreign country that may be required to maximize its profitability. And last, a problem arises with licensing when the firm's competitive advantage is based not so much on its products as on the management, marketing, and manufacturing capabilities that produce those products. Foreign direct investment have advantages. A firm will favor foreign direct investment over exporting as an entry strategy when transportation costs or trade barriers make exporting unattractive. A firm will favor foreign direct investment over licensing when it wishes to maintain control over its technological know-how or over its operation and business strategy, or when the firm's capabilities are simply not amenable to licensing. The pattern of foreign direct investment. Firms in the same industry often undertake foreign direct investment around same time and tend to direct their investment activities towards certain locations. Strategic behavior. Knickerbocker looked at the relationship between foreign direct investment and rivalry in oligopolistic industries, which is the industries composed of a limited number of large firms, and suggested that foreign direct investment inflows are reflection of strategic rivalry between firms in the global marketplace. The theory can be extended to embrace the concept of multi-point competition when two or more enterprises encounter each other in different regional markets, national markets, or industry. We also have the product life cycle. Burnous view is the firms undertake foreign direct investment at particular stages in the life cycle of product they have pioneered. Firm invest in other advanced countries when local demand in those countries grows large enough to support local production, and then ship production to low-cost developing countries when product standardization and market saturation give rise to price competition and cost pressures. Vernon fails to explain why it is profitable to the firm to undertake foreign direct investments rather than continuing to export from the home base or licensing a foreign firm. The eclectic paradigm. John Dunning's eclectic paradigm argues that in addition to the various factors discussed earlier, location-specific advantages that arises from using resources, endowments, or assets that are tied to a particular location and that a firm finds valuable to combine with its own unique assets and externalities, which is the knowledge spillovers that occur when companies in the same industry locate in the same area, must also be considered when explaining both the rationale for and direction of foreign direct investment. Political ideology and foreign direct investment. Ideology toward foreign direct investment has ranges from a radical stance that is hostile to all foreign direct investment to the non-interventionist principle of free market economies. Between these two extremes is an approach that might be called pragmatic nationalism. Supporters of the radical view, which traces its roots to Marxist political and economic theory, argue that the MNE is an instrument of imperialist domination and a tool for exploiting host countries to the exclusive benefit of their capitalist imperialist home countries. The free market view. The free market view argues that international production should be distributed among countries according to the theory of comparative advantage. In free market view has been embraced by a number of advanced and developing countries including the United States, Britain, and Hong Kong. When we say the pragmatic nationalist view, is that FDI has both benefits such as inflows of capital, technology, skills, and jobs, and costs such as repatriation of profits to the home country and a negative balance of payment effect. According to this view, foreign direct investment should be allowed only if the benefits outweigh the costs. Benefits and costs of foreign direct investment. The benefits and costs of foreign direct investment must be explored from the perspective of both the host, which is the receiving country, and the home, which is the source country. Host country can gain benefits in inward foreign direct investment such as the resource transfer effect, the employment effect, the balance payment effect, and last, effects on the competition and economic growth. Host country costs. There are three main costs of inward foreign direct investment. First is the possible adverse effect on foreign direct investment on competition within the host nation. Second, the adverse effect on the balance of payment. And last, the perceived loss of national sovereignty and autonomy. The home country costs. The most important concerns center around the balance of payments and employment effect of outward foreign investment. Well, international trade theory and foreign direct investment. International trade theory suggests that the home country concerns about the negative economic effects of the offshore production, which is foreign direct investment undertaken to serve the home market, may not be valid. So, home country can gain benefits also. Some benefits are the effect on the capital account of the home country's balance of payment from the inward flow of foreign earnings. Second, the employment effects that arise from the outward foreign direct investment. And last, the gains from the learning valuable skills from foreign markets that can be subsequently be transferred back to the home country. Home country policies. Home countries can both encourage and restrict foreign direct investment by local firms, while host country policies are adopt policies designed both to restrict and to encourage inward foreign direct investment. Implications for managers. The theory of foreign direct investments has implications for strategic behaviors of firms. Government policy on foreign direct investment can also be important for international businesses. So, government policy, a host government's attitudes toward foreign direct investment is an important variable in decisions about where to locate foreign production facilities and where to make a foreign direct investment.
I therefore conclude that globalization is a broad concept that flows through many aspects of the world. It had increased the trade products, ideas, technologies, and created a world without boundaries. The nature of international business is changing in response to the changing global economy. We are moving away from a world in which national economies were relatively self-contained entities, isolated from each other by barriers to cross-border trade and investment, by distance, time zones, and language, and by national differences in government regulation, culture, and business systems. And we are moving toward a world in which barriers to cross-border trade and investments are declining. Perceived distance is shrinking due to advances in transportation and telecommunications technology. Material culture is starting to look similar the world over, and national economies are merging into an interdependent, integrated global economic system. Moreover, more investors can access new investment opportunities and study new markets at a greater distance than before. The growth in global market has helped to promote efficiency through competition and the division of labor. The specialization that allows people and economies to focus on what do they best. The technological advancement makes easier and quicker to complete international transaction in both trade and financial flow. Globalization has resulted in greater interconnectedness among markets around the world and increased communications and awareness of business opportunities in the corners of the world. More investors can access new investment and opportunities and study new market at a greater distance than before. So the International Economic Organization helped to manage, regulate, and police the global marketplace and to promote the establishment of multinational treaties. Globalization has a positive and negative impact. The debate around globalization is ongoing. It can provide a stronger collective identity, empower individual and group distinctiveness.
So, as a conclusion, after analyzing the topic about national differences in political economy, I concluded that in reality, international business operations and activities face various difficulties because of political, cultural, and legal differences of other countries. A country political economy plays a huge role in international business. In terms of individualism, it guarantees individual freedom and expression. People can pursue own economic self-interest. Individualism doesn't mean that there is no care for society, but they operate with a different set of assumptions. It is a freedom to work hard and prosper. It influences people to do better and to get what they want. If the legal system of a certain country is weak, so there is a big possibility that corruption is much more prominent.
I therefore conclude that in a society, there has a different culture. One society was unknown without a culture. Like in religion, there has a there has differentiation in terms of beliefs and rituals. There are two types of language, which is spoken and unspoken language that we use in our everyday lives. The unspoken language is a nonverbal cues like hand gestures and facial expressions. Differences in culture imply that there is a need for managers to develop cross-cultural literacy, connection between culture and national competitive advantage, and there is a connection between culture and ethic in decision making.
Topic, my conclusion is economic theory or international trade theory indicates that international trade raises the standard of living. A comparison between the performance of open and closed economies confirms that the benefit of trade in practice are significant. Also, international trade is the exchange of capital, goods, and service across the international borders. International trade is extremely beneficial and crucial for the continuance of globalization. Without international trade, a nation would be limited to the goods and services produced within their own borders. Lastly, economic basis for trade is the nation have different resources which some nation to obtain absolute advantage, which means a country can produce more in particular product from a specific quantity of resources than other countries.
Conclusion. We all know that political economy is the study of how economic theories which plays out their role in the real world. With that, political economy finds itself at a political crossroad between competing demand. The GATT and WTO are the creation series of multinational treaties. It seeks to understand more likely about history, culture, market, or tradings toward another country. It also indicated here that in trade policy, we have 7 instruments, which include tariffs, whereas it serves as a source of revenue for government. Subsidies might give also a big impact in competing against low-cost foreign imports and gain export market. Imports and export are connected in terms of political economy.
As a conclusion about the foreign direct investments or FDI, it can be seen as important source of capital investment and a determinant of the future growth rate of an economy. The greater the capital investment in an economy, the more favorable its future prospects are likely to be. FDI can make a positive contribution to the host economy by supplying capital, technology, and management resources that would otherwise not available. It brings jobs to a host country that would otherwise created there. Furthermore, it can help a certain country to achieve current account surplus. If the FDR substitute for imports of goods and services, and if the MNE uses a foreign subsidiary to export goods and services to other countries, FDI in the form of greenfield investment increases the level of competitions in market, driving down prices and improving the welfare of consumers. Increased competitions can lead to increased productivity growth, product processes innovations, and greater economic growth.